Nehemiah, the rebuilding of Jerusalem. Chapter 1. Nehemiah, a cupbearer in King Artaxerxes' court, learned that Jerusalem was in ruins. Deeply troubled, he prayed to God, confessing the sins of his people and asking for help to rebuild the city. His heartfelt prayer was a plea for divine favor and a chance to restore his homeland. Chapter 2. The King's Blessing. The king noticed Nehemiah's sadness and asked about it. After a silent prayer, Nehemiah boldly requested permission to go to Jerusalem to rebuild its walls. Impressed by his dedication, King Artaxerxes not only granted his request but also provided letters for safe passage and materials for the construction. Chapter 3. Rebuilding the Wall. Nehemiah arrived in Jerusalem and inspected the damaged walls at night. He then encouraged the people to join in rebuilding efforts. Each group took responsibility for a section of the wall, working together with enthusiasm and dedication to restore the city's defenses. Chapter 4. Overcoming opposition. As the work progressed, enemies like Sanballat and Tobiah mocked and threatened the builders. Nehemiah responded by praying for strength and arming the workers. Despite the threats, the people continued building, demonstrating their determination and faith. Chapter 5. Righting Wrongs. Nehemiah discovered that some wealthy Jews were exploiting the poor, charging high interest, and taking their children as collateral. He confronted these leaders publicly, demanding they stop their injustices. The nobles agreed to repay their debts and treat their fellow Israelites with fairness. Chapter 6. Completion of the Wall. Despite ongoing schemes to disrupt the work, Nehemiah and the people completed the wall in just 52 days. This achievement amazed their enemies and demonstrated that their success was due to God's help. Chapter 7. Organizing the City. With the wall finished, Nehemiah focused on securing Jerusalem. He appointed gatekeepers, singers, and Levites to oversee the city and conducted a census to organize the population and ensure the city's effective management. Chapter 8. The Law is Read. Ezra the scribe read the book of the law to the people from early morning until midday. The people listened intently, wept, and celebrated as they heard God's words. They rejoiced in their renewed commitment to follow God's laws. Chapter 9. Confession and Renewal. The people engaged in fasting and wearing sackcloth, confessing their sins and those of their ancestors. They reflected on God's faithfulness and their own disobedience, renewing their commitment to follow God through prayer and dedication. Chapter 10. Renewing the Covenant. Leaders and people signed a covenant with God, pledging to obey His laws, uphold the Sabbath, avoid intermarriage with other nations, and support the temple with tithes and offerings. This formal agreement marked their renewed commitment to live by God's commands. Chapter 11. Rebuilding the Community. To repopulate Jerusalem, Nehemiah drew lots, requiring 1 out of every 10 people to move into the city. Those who volunteered were honored, helping to strengthen Jerusalem's community and its religious practices. Chapter 12. The Wall's Dedication. Nehemiah organized a grand celebration to dedicate the completed wall. 2 choirs, led by Ezra and Nehemiah, marched along the wall, singing praises and giving thanks to God. The joyous ceremony marked the successful restoration of the city. Chapter 13. Final reforms. Nehemiah returned from a visit to Persia to find that some had neglected reforms. Tobiah had been given a room in the temple, and the Sabbath was being disregarded. Nehemiah took action, removing Tobiah, enforcing Sabbath observance, and addressing other issues to restore adherence to God's covenant.